The night Raymond Greco was escorted out of his own restaurant in handcuffs, with federal agents carrying 3 boxes of financial records behind him, he kept saying the same thing to anyone who would listen, that it was impossible, that nobody had access to those accounts, that there was no way a delivery girl with a pizza bag could have done this to him. He was wrong on every count. Her name was Sofia Marchetti, and the first time she rang the wrong door on the 14th floor of the Lakeshore Tower, she was 26 minutes behind schedule and her feet were killing her. She was a full-figured woman, broad shoulders, soft arms, a round face with dark eyes that noticed everything and gave away nothing, and she had been delivering for Valentino's Gourmet on the night shift for 7 months. Not because she had to, because she chose to. What nobody delivering orders to the Lakeshore Tower knew, and what Sofia had taken careful steps to make sure they never found out, was that she held a master's degree in forensic accounting from DePaul University, 3 years of work at a federal consulting firm, and a very specific reason for being in this building every Wednesday and Friday night. The door she rang by mistake was 1401. The man who opened it was Dante Cavallo. He was holding a towel around his waist and nothing else, and he looked at her the way people look at unexpected things, not with irritation but with genuine curiosity. Dark hair, dark eyes, a scar along his left collarbone that caught the hallway light. She had seen his file. She knew exactly who he was. She also knew, from the way he tilted his head and said nothing for 3 full seconds before speaking, that he was a man who processed the world very carefully before reacting to it. "Wrong floor," he said. 1401, she said, looking at the ticket. "I have 1401. You want 1410? He pointed down the hall. "Building numbers run the other direction from the elevators. Easy mistake." "Thank you," she said, and left. She did not look back. She did not need to. What she noticed, and filed away, was that the hallway outside 1401 smelled like cigarette smoke that didn't match the brand Dante Cavallo was known to use, that there was a fresh scuff mark on the doorframe, and that the small security camera above his door had been rotated 2 degrees from its usual position. She knew its usual position because she had walked this hall 22 times over the past 4 months. What she found next, in the 3 weeks following that first wrong door, would crack open a part of the case she hadn't expected. Sofia Marchetti had been building that case for 9 months, not against Dante Cavallo, against Raymond Greco. Greco ran the financial architecture of half the organized crime in the northern districts: shell companies, offshore transfers, restaurant fronts. He was meticulous, cautious, and genuinely intelligent in a way that most people underestimated because he was also crude and loud in public. That loudness, Sofia had come to understand, was itself a performance. A man who wanted to be remembered as a bully was never remembered as a strategist. Greco had built his entire career on that gap. He needed people to see only the surface, only the noise, only the contempt he projected outward like a shield, because underneath it, he was terrified of being outmaneuvered by someone he never thought to watch. He had spent 30 years never being watched by the right person. Sofia had gotten close to his network by being unremarkable. A delivery girl nobody looked at twice, a presence so ordinary it registered as furniture. She had been building a financial portrait of Greco's operation, one detail at a time. The timing patterns on interbank transfers, the routing signatures, the way his accountant made the same minor decimal error on every transaction over $50,000. It was the kind of error you only spotted after looking at enough of them, and Sofia had looked at 412. She kept running into Dante Cavallo, not entirely by accident. The freight elevator she used most often let out near the service entrance to the floor where Cavallo kept a permanent suite. She saw him twice in the parking garage, once in the lobby when he was waiting for a car and she was finishing her shift. He noticed her each time, said nothing. But he noticed, with that same unhurried, careful attention she had clocked from the first night. He was a man who catalogued things. She recognized it because she did the same. The fourth time they were in the same space, Raymond Greco was there too. It happened in the building's main lobby on a Thursday evening in March. Sofia was signing out with the front desk when Greco came in with two men she recognized from surveillance photographs. He was in good spirits, laughing too loudly, working the performance at full volume. He saw her at the desk and stopped. "Is this a new uniform?" he said, addressing her but speaking to his companions. "Valentino's hiring wide loads now?" The two men laughed. The desk clerk looked at the counter. Sofia finished signing her name. She capped her pen. She looked at Greco with an expression that contained absolutely nothing, which is much harder than it sounds and much more unnerving to receive. "Have a good evening," she said, and walked toward the exit at a pace that suggested she had somewhere to be. "Must be those big thighs," Greco called after her. "Useful for carrying heavy boxes. That's about all they're useful for." More laughter. A couple near the elevator moved away from the sound of it. Psychologists call what happened in Sofia Marchetti's body at that moment the tend and befriend response. The alternative to fight or flight that Dr. Shelley Taylor at UCLA identified in her landmark research as the dominant stress pattern in people who have learned that direct confrontation carries too high a cost. Sofia didn't freeze. She didn't retreat. She walked out calmly, filed the interaction under Raymond Greco, additional documentation, and went home. She had been collecting documentation on Greco for 9 months. One more entry changed nothing about the case. It changed something else entirely, something she didn't have a category for yet. Behind her, in the lobby, Dante Cavallo stood by the elevator bank. He had seen every second of it. He said nothing to Greco that night. He was not a man who acted from impulse, but he stood very still in a way that people who knew him well recognized as the specific stillness that preceded consequences. And Raymond Greco, who had never bothered to know him well enough, missed it entirely. He had made exactly one mistake in that lobby. He would find out what it cost him in April. In the weeks that followed, Dante Cavallo started leaving his suite door slightly open when he heard the freight elevator. Not obviously, just enough. And Sofia, who noticed everything, noticed this too. She did not exploit it. She was not here for him. She was here because 4 of Greco's shell companies ran their paperwork through a courier infrastructure that passed through this building, and she had spent 9 months reverse engineering the signature of those transfers. She had enough to hand to the Federal Financial Crimes Unit. She had been ready for 6 weeks. What she was waiting for was timing. Specifically, she needed Greco to be positioned so that the arrest would be airtight, so that he couldn't collapse the financial structure before the seizure order went through. That moment came in April. Greco was hosting what he called a business dinner in a private room at his own restaurant, Greco's on North Clark, with 3 of his key financial partners. It was the quarterly meeting where physical documents were exchanged. Old habit that Greco refused to break because he didn't trust digital anything, which was both his greatest operational security and his greatest vulnerability. Sofia knew about the dinner because she had been delivering to that restaurant twice a week for 3 months and had memorized the private room's booking pattern. She was not a delivery girl that night. She walked into Greco's on North Clark in a charcoal blazer and dark slacks, carrying a document folio, and went directly to the private dining room in the back. The maitre d' started to intercept her. She handed him a card. The federal agent she had been coordinating with for 6 months, who was outside with a team and a signed seizure order, needed those physical documents confirmed as present before entry. Sofia's job was confirmation. She opened the door. Greco looked up from the head of the table. For exactly 1 second, she watched his face process what he was seeing. The delivery girl, here, in different clothes, with federal credentials visible in her breast pocket. "You have," Sofia said, looking around the table at the folders, the ledgers, the physical evidence of 4 years of financial crime arranged in front of her like a gift. made a consistent accounting error on every transfer over $50,000 for the past 4 years. I've documented 412 instances. The federal team outside would like those folders, please. Greco stood. He started with denial, you don't know what you're looking at, and moved through it quickly to something uglier, calls he would make, people who understood their place, things that happened to those who didn't. He was still talking when the door opened behind Sofia and the federal agents came in. He was still talking, quieter now, when the handcuffs went on at 9:47 p.m. Sofia didn't know until later that Dante Cavallo had been in the restaurant. He had come in just after her, stood at the bar, and watched the private room door with the particular stillness she had come to recognize as his version of attention at its most complete. Nobody had called him. He had simply known. In John Gottman's 4 decades of studying what breaks people and what holds them together, he described a state he called genuine admiration, not respect from obligation, not tolerance from proximity, but the specific recognition of another person's competence that rewrites what you believed was possible. It is, he wrote, one of the rarest things one person can feel for another, because it requires having been genuinely, completely surprised. Dante Cavallo was waiting outside the restaurant when Sofia came out at 1:15 in the morning. He was leaning against a black car, coat over his arm, watching the last of the federal vehicles pull away from North Clark Street. He looked at her the way he always looked at her, not with performance, not with calculation, but with that unhurried, careful attention that was simply how he moved through the world. 1401, he said. Wrong door, she said. I'm not so sure about that. The street was quiet. Sofia had spent 9 months being invisible, being the person no one thought to watch. She was, she realized, tired of it, not regretful, because it had worked exactly as intended, just finished with it. One question, she said. Ask it. The camera above your door, someone rotated it 2 degrees last November. Was that you, or was that Greco's people checking your floor? 3 full seconds. Greco's people, he said. I rotated it back the next morning. I know, she said. I checked. He smiled then, not the performance kind, not the kind that preceded anything calculated. The other kind. Small and real and slightly reluctant, as though he hadn't intended it and had done it anyway. Sofia Marchetti, he said. She hadn't told him her name. Dante Cavallo, she said. She had known his for 9 months. He opened the car door. She thought about it for 4 seconds, long enough to be a real decision, short enough to know she had already made it, and got in. The city moved past the windows, and for the first time in a very long time, Sofia Marchetti was not watching it for evidence. Some victories aren't taken. They're built quietly and precisely in the places no one thinks to look until the moment they can no longer be ignored. If this story reminded you that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one no one notices, leave a like. And if you want to see what happens when the wrong person walks into the right room next time, subscribe. The next story begins somewhere nobody expects.